Hey guys, Poro here with another Worlds 2025 daily recap, this time for the series between HLE CFO and G2 Fly to see who makes it to quarterfinals and who gets sent to the 2-2 draw. Originally, I was going to listen to all the comments asking me to keep half stars, but referred to the ratings as a 5-point system instead of 10. I was planning on trying it anyway, but all of the comments supported the idea and I was going to do it. However, have you ever had the experience where you're cleaning your room or emptying the dishwasher or something, and then one of your parents walks in and is like, "Hey, can you empty the dishwasher?" while you're already emptying it, and now you really don't want to do it anymore? Well, someone decided to send an email to my business email, used for business inquiries, and told me to change my rating system, and now I feel extra stubborn about it. So for this video, I'll still be using the 10-point system everyone hates, and you'll have to wait until tomorrow for me to make the change. Also, another thing is that when I made that last recap, at the time, the schedule on the broadcast made it look like the matches today would be G2 vs Fly and Gen G vs Top Esports, but a few hours afterwards they revised the schedule and it turns out we get CFO vs HLE today. I mentioned it in a comment on that video, but my prediction for the CFO HLE series is HLE winning 2-1. Despite HLE losing to AL already, I thought they actually looked pretty strong in that loss and I expect them to still be a very good team. Game 1 of HLE vs CFO was a very fight-heavy game. HLE consistently had setup on objectives, but CFO was fearless in their attempts to contest. Now that said, I think most of their attempts were a pretty bad idea, and they lost almost every teamfight in skirmish. The big issue is that in the first couple of fights, Zeka got massive shuffles on the Azir and ended up starting the game 5-0 before the 12-minute mark. CFO did have a couple of close calls though. They managed to walk in and steal the Herald, they stole a third Drake which put them on sole point even though they lost the fight, and there was also a topside jungle teamfight that ended up going 3 for 3. However, anytime CFO made any ground in the game, it felt like it was always because HLE was mis-executing fights. In terms of map pressure, the game was all HLE all the way. I personally felt as though this was not a high quality game. Zeus got caught multiple times and had bad equalizers, Peanut made a couple of his Peanut ints, Viper and Zeka both had a few mediocre teamfights, Driver was way too aggressive and took too much damage, Hongq had a rough time in lane and on side, and Kaiwing was caught out and forced to flash in awkward ways a few times. I think Junja navigated the game pretty well given the state of the map with the super fed Azir, and I liked Delight's engages, but I wouldn't say anyone else stood out. After seeing this game 1, I do expect HLE to win game 2. They seem pretty solid in terms of what they want to do and their game plans on the Rift, and their main mistakes were related to mechanics or decisions in the middle of fights. It doesn't seem like CFO has the macro to keep up, and they reverted back to their bad domestic habit of contesting everything even when their setups were horrible. We'll see though, the game wasn't clean and CFO could still win if they get the better of HLE in the early scraps. Game 2 was a tragedy for CFO. I think looking at the objective count tells the whole story here. CFO got Grubs, Herald, Feats, Otacon, and 3 Dragons, and they lost the game. At first, I was pretty skeptical of the Caitlyn Alistar, and to be honest, I think the Caitlyn Alistar is still shit. However, it was not the bot lane that got HLE in their massive deficit. What happened was that Junja completely outjungled Peanut for the entire early and mid game. Peanut was making mistakes with his pathing, but mostly it was Junja just running circles around him. The Trundle also had multiple great plays early to help CFO generate their lead, and the Ziggs was also outputting a huge amount of damage. It actually looked like CFO were going to run away with the game and close it out cleanly. Then they started having their objective setup problems. The biggest throw for them was on a Drake contest that could have gotten them Soul, but Kaiwing and Rest both played out the situation really badly in my opinion. Rest took way too much damage, he walked into multiple traps and was low before the fight even broke out. Kaiwing did the Kaiwing classic where instead of playing with his team to build space, he went for the Narnia flank to try to make the game-winning adrenaline play, but he ended up just dying for free. This first Drake fight evened up the massive gold lead CFO had, and HLE were back in the game. The problems continued on the next Drake fight as well. Up until this point, it should be noted that Zeus was absolutely running it down. He was having a terrible game with multiple mistakes, but in this one fight he finally did his job and got onto the backline to one-shot the Ziggs. Kaiwing also took a solo Realm Warp into the enemy backline and was rendered basically useless, and this combined with the zone control from Kate Traps and Talia ult was enough to get HLE their second Drake, and they shortly ended the game with a Baron fight. With this, HLE beat CFO 2-0, but it was definitely not a convincing 2-0. CFO were in the lead for 90% of game 2, and HLE had their issues. Zeus was pretty bad in both games, and the bot lane weren't as good as they usually are either. Zeka did step up today a bit, at least better than he did in prior games, but nobody on the team made me feel super confident about this team's chances heading into quarterfinals. As for CFO, it's the objective setups that are killing them. I was really worried this would be their downfall in my breakdown, but it seems like the read was correct. They fight everything, even if it looks really bad, they take too much damage when they don't need to, and they overthink who needs to go and when. These are the qualities that make me think CFO is not a top team who can take down Eastern threats, and they'll have to address it before they go up against a potentially strong 2-2 team. With this series done, we can move on to the grudge match between NA and EU that every Western fan has been waiting for. Game 1 is the FlyQuest NA fans have come to know very well over the past year. Low and slow, play to punish obvious mistakes while minimizing their own mistakes, sack objectives that seem even slightly difficult, and win through superior objective setups and macro. I think there was no point in this game where the members of Fly were stressing. That said, there were 2 moments where I felt maybe things could go wrong for Fly. The first one was how G2 executed the level 1. They correctly predicted the Corki swapping top and were able to get Caitlyn in the 1v1. Hans ended up with a 1k individual gold lead from this. I think this was pretty well played from G2. The next somewhat sweaty moment was when Fly stanced up to go for a Drake when G2 already had 2, and Busio walked in and got chunked way too hard, meaning Fly had to sack Drake and give over Soul Point. Despite all of this though, nobody on Fly panicked and they beat down G2 with a series of Baron contests where they continuously blew flash after flash so that they had a bigger advantage for the next fight. Very well done from them overall. I gave Quad a 4 because he was getting clapped pretty hard in lane by Caps, and Bwipo a 5 because it felt like he got slightly impatient in 1 or 2 of the standoffs that could have been risky. For the most part though, this was just an outclassing by Fly as Inspired played about as close as you can get to a flawless game. Game 2 was a much better look from G2. In the first game, they had a very slow comp with the Maokai Victor and didn't try to progress the game at all. Against Fly, playing that style is a bit of a death sentence. In this game, G2 went for Trundle Rakan and did way more around the map to get leads. Skewmond had some nice ganks, including a double gank top that ended up killing 2 people somehow, and from this deficit, Fly never had enough firepower to come back into the game. Bwipo and Quad were both pretty big problems for Fly in this one. Both of them got caught out multiple times and made it so Fly were never quite able to get a true 5v5 fight. Bwipo especially made this game really tough. None of his equalizers were on point, and he was the first to get his health bar chunked in multiple standoffs. Meanwhile, G2 kept it clean and made very few mistakes as they slowly closed it out with Baron and Dragon Soul. I don't particularly think anyone on G2 was a huge standout. Skewmond had a super solid game, probably his best game of the tournament so far, but I also do think the kills he got were on timers that Fly should have been able to avoid if they were paying attention. Labrov had a few engages, but he also went too quickly and got himself one-shot a couple of times. Caps ended with an impressive scoreline, but he was not laning well at all and only recovered the deficit once Quad inted to a gank. Overall, a good game from G2, but nothing special to convince me the momentum is in their favor for Game 3. Game 3 was actually pretty tense. At first, it looked like Fly were going to win due to the massive leads they generated early. Bwipo found a nice proxy timer right when he was about to hit level 6, which allowed him to trap Jax in lane with a huge item disadvantage. Then Sejuani ganked on the timer and Jax was just down an obscene amount of gold and XP. However, Bwipo ended up playing his lead really badly. He died on a gank timer first, and then got his base cancelled on a Drake standoff that allowed Jax to take a full tier 2, and the lead was completely dissipated. We saw this even have a significant impact as Jax 1v1'd the Renekton on Otacon. Speaking of Otacon, Quad did not have a good game either. It was on his shoulders to carry this game, and he failed multiple plays. There was a free kill he missed earlier in the game, but his biggest int was when he flashed forward to get a potential huge shuffle on G2, and he somehow missed the no-flash Orianna, which made him just die. They possibly could have won this fight with that ult hitting, but instead they got ran over and it looked like G2 was going to win. Then Inspired started goating it up. He was already playing pretty well, but at this point when the game looked doomed, Inspired found some insane plays to get Fly back in it, and now the game looked even again. Fly got a Baron but used it horribly as Quad got picked out yet again as he got hit with a dry Verisol while he had flash up, ending the Baron push. Now the game was down to some tense mid lane standoffs. In the first one, Skewmon inted by walking in thinking he could tank all the damage by recasting W and ulting, but he was CC chained and one-shot which allowed Fly to take Baron and a couple of kills. Then on the ensuing Baron push, Skewmon made up for his sins as he and Caps comboed together to get a 4-man flash shockwave, and G2 won the teamfight and ended the series. With this, EU gets the last laugh on NA for the year as G2 advanced to quarterfinals and Fly gets sent to the 2-2 matches. Funnily enough, I actually don't think anyone played particularly well in the series except for Inspired. According to my ratings, Skewmond was technically the best player on his team, but no he wasn't because he was AFK in Game 1 and ran it down in that crucial huge moment in Game 3. I'm straight up giving series MVP to Inspired, I don't care. It's not his fault his solo laners were low-key war criminals in this one. I think this series actually negatively impacts my opinion of both teams to be honest. Fly were in pretty comfortable positions with comps they like to play, and they weren't able to turn those positions into wins. They usually never throw these types of games, but today they buckled under the pressure and lost. And G2 isn't even some insane pressure or anything. I didn't think they looked that good today either. It was a very middle-of-the-pack quality series for me. I highly doubt either of these teams make it to semifinals, and that's if Fly even get to quarters to begin with. Random side note jumping in, I actually forgot to do my predictions in the script, so I'm just going to do them off rip real quick. Okay, so tomorrow we have Gen.G versus Top Esports is the second series. I already did my prediction for that one, so that one's in the last video. I said Gen G 2-0 because I feel like top esports is just, they're on the road to choking. And then the other series is actually interesting. I have Secret Whales 2-1ing MKOI. I believe in the power of the Secret Whales, mainly just because I'm biased because they're my favorite team. So yep, those are my predictions for tomorrow. That's all I have for you for this one. I recently started a Patreon for people who want to support me more while I'm making these videos. I have 3 tiers, each with varying amounts of benefits, including different types of behind-the-scenes content, and even a custom Poro drawing that I'll display in video outros. If that interests you, check out the Patreon link in the description. I'll see you all for the next one. Bye!